Discovery uses 20 seconds to LOS secret.
Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
Good.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Gnomon stream. My name is Adam Hartel. I'm going to be your host today, and we have got a great stream in store for you. What we were just watching is the 2020 Gnomon Student Reel. And that is all student work who are part of our programs here at Gnomon. And if you want to know what it is we teach the entire pipeline that is required to make some of the amazing artwork that we were just watching. So today's stream is we're going to kick it off with a great interview with Omar Aweidah. And I'll be sharing his bio in just a moment, bringing him on. And that's going to be followed up by a presentation about the industry, about careers for artists in digital production, and how Gnomon's training artists for those careers. So if you're interested in our school, or if you just simply want to know what it is that we're doing, please stick around for that in the last 30 minutes. I'm going to be sharing that with you. But for now, let me just share with you a little bit about our fantastic guest who's going to be joining us in just a moment. So Omar Aweidah is a character artist from Chicago. He went to Gnomon in 2012, right out of school, because he saw the student reel kind of thing we were just watching and thought, that's what I want to do. So after graduation from Gnomon, he went to work at Cloud Imperium Games as a concept artist. After about a year as a hard surface concept artist, Omar had the opportunity to transition into a character artist role. From there, he went to work at Obsidian Entertainment, working on the Outer Worlds, where he transitioned from senior artist to lead. Once the game was getting closer to release, Omar moved to Seattle to work at Amazon for a short time and jumped over to Sucker Punch Productions when there was an opportunity to work on Ghosts of Tsushima as character art lead. So with that, I want to say, Omar, welcome to the stream. It is a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate you guys hitting me up and seeing if I could come on.
Absolutely.
Look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So you're currently in Seattle right now, right? That's
I'm currently in Seattle.
From we got usually people all over the planet watching us on these streams, and one of the few positive byproduct of all of us being in quarantine is this is the way that we connect today. So thank you for connecting with us and all our viewers. So just kind of jumping right in before we get into more about character art and the things that you do, could you share with us just a little bit about your journey to Gnomon? Like how did you get involved in art, and how did you know that you wanted to pursue an education with Gnomon?
Sure. Well, first off, I'd like to say like that student reel that was just shown before here, that was awesome. That just like got me all like giddy and excited like right out the bat. And I was like, oh man, I can't like wait to go make some art right now.
Yeah.
These students are so good. But anyway, like that's kind of like what I felt when I first started getting interested in Gnomon. But I went to an arts college. Well, essentially, I've been like drawing and illustrating and doing stuff like that like my whole life. Never did anything in 3D. Did a little bit of graphic design and like comic book illustration when I was younger. So when it came to like college, I didn't really know what I was going to do or what I was like supposed to do. So I was going to do like a multimedia program, but then I had a friend who was going to art school who was just like, dude, you're super good at, drawing. I didn't take any art classes in high school. And he was like, you should just apply, like put together a portfolio, apply. So I did that. And then after 4 years of essentially like an illustration degree, you think to yourself, okay, what do I do with this? Like, so, yeah. I kind of did some graphic design and stuff. And then I picked up one of those like ballistic publishing books. I think I like have it here, right next to me. Oh, maybe, no, actually, I think it was like expose or something like that. And they had all this crazy art. I think when I started like to dig into it, it was all, more commercial art, stuff that I wasn't necessarily exposed to, but the quality level was like so high, and it was all that stuff that I really liked. Like I saw like an image from like Kakai Kataki where there was like a giant polar bear, I think it was for Guild Wars 2, like ripping this, I'm trying to recall it from memory, but like ripping this giant like cage or something. There was some war scene going on, and I was like, I want to do that. How do I do that? Mm-hmm. Right? Because I literally knew how to like draw with like a pen and then scan that in a bitmap and then paint it in Photoshop or color with Prismacolors. Like those are like my two options. Totally. So then I think through like researching Expose, I saw maybe an ad for Gnomon or something like that. And I started going on their website, and then I just like kind of became infatuated. And they had like a 2-year program at the time, and I wasn't doing anything else. So I was like, all right, let's I've never been to LA, but let's move to LA. I didn't even visit LA before I moved to Los Angeles. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So I like found a place on like the internet. No, yeah, something like that. Or actually I knew someone from Chicago who was moving to Los Angeles around the same time. And then we got a place, and I applied to Gnomon, and it was like, I don't know if they still do this, but they like accept you like really short. Like the distance between when they accept you to when you get in or when you have to start classes is really short. Like I think mine was like 3 weeks. So I just kind of had to move there, and they were like, it's looking good, but you're not fully, but then they accepted me into the 2-year program. And, that's how I ended up at Gnomon and going to the campus, like the television center. It was amazing. Yeah, no, I miss getting to be on campus right now, going into work. You're right, because it's funny when I'm out there talking with people who they're at that place where they're kind of like when you saw that publication, like, what is this and how do I make it? They don't know a lot about that world. It's funny, like how before that, it's almost like the best kept secret in art. But as soon as you go through that looking glass, everything just starts like dominoes, like things open up. And and then you find Gnomon, or you see the reel, or you just start, I don't know,
you kind of become a junkie for it, right? You have to find every source that you can find making that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, it's so vast. You become like a specialist almost. You're like, this one thing is just so interesting, and you just keep diving into it.
Yeah, I can remember like pre-internet, it was all about like going to the library and the magazine rack, right? Like finding those publications, is coming through that stuff. So yeah, so you made this really bold move of moving from Chicago to LA, which is no small journey. And you just kind of dived in with both feet then. You got to find housing and getting accepted to school and then jumping in, right?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have any, I could stay in Chicago and then, find my way. But I had like, I guess I was just so infatuated with what Gnomon was doing and like the art that they were producing. I felt like, kind of compelled to go there at any means necessary. Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing is that everybody who is at Gnomon is kind of like that. It's like, I have to do this, I take me to Alderaan, teach me the ways of the Force. I have to be here. So you got into Gnomon. Did you already know that you were interested in things like character art before you started at Gnomon, or was that something that evolved while you were there?
No, that's totally something that evolved when I was there. I believe that I was lucky to not necessarily have to do, because there was a 2-year program and a 3-year program at the time. I don't know if it's the same now, but I was lucky in the sense that like I got to take a intro to Maya class with Miguel Ortega, and that class was, I mean, Maya was just insane at the time. Like I've never touched anything like that. I've never taken a cube and extruded it, and then all of a sudden now, which is a variety of cubes, I can make a computer panel. So I was like, oh, I want to do environments. I want to do hard surface spaceships. I want to do this. So, but then you take your ZBrush class and you're like, whoa, I don't even want to do that. But I want to do, So it just kind of evolved. Like everything was really interesting, minus the scripting class. That was a tough one.
Yeah, but necessary. Yeah.
But necessary.
Yeah.
Very necessary, but hard. Very hard.
Yeah, totally. There's a huge difference though between doing something like that for the sake of doing it and doing it because if I get this done, it's going to make this thing really cool. So totally different motivation factor. So you got a chance really at Gnomon to try a lot of different things then, and that helped you to understand what you wanted to do post school.
Yeah, 100%. And there's always, since you're surrounded by a bunch of people doing other disciplines, you can always kind of take stuff that they're doing and apply it to kind of like what you're doing as well. So the fact that we were all together and, hanging out there, essentially because that's what, like, I didn't have any friends at the time because I just moved to Los Angeles. Yeah. So we all like met there, and then we just stayed at Gnomon like till like the wee hours of the night. And aside from the classroom, you get a lot of knowledge just from picking other people's brains, and that evolves over time. So you literally got to see like how everything was made.
Yeah, it's such a huge difference between trying to figure stuff out on your own, which is possible. A lot of people have done it, but as soon as you're immersed with like a ton of other people just like yourself, and you're all like chasing down this knowledge, it just ramps everything up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I was that person who had like the extreme self-discipline to like be like, all right, every day I'm going to watch this. I'm going to become like a master of, visual effects, because there is information online for free. Like it is possible. But for me personally, I just didn't, it was just, essentially Gnomon like taught me the questions to ask, because I wouldn't even know where to start to Google certain things. But now since I know what this is even called, I can kind of get closer to asking that question to answer, or to get the answer that I'm seeking. But before that, it was crazy. But I definitely know people who've done it.
Oh yeah, when I totally agree with you. I've been in both camps, learning by myself, and as well as in a community, especially a community like Gnomon, taking classes. Even if you are that hyper disciplined person that can do it all on your own. Scott Robertson broke it down really well once. He said, like, yeah, the internet's out there and it's all available, but there's no substitute for the right kind of critique and the right kind of peer base of other artists, and being immersed in that. It's like you said, you don't know what you don't know. So you need a community, and you need instructors to help you know what it is that you don't know. Or at
Totally.
least you can find that a lot faster. Is there anything about the student experience, like what would you say was one of your favorite things about the student experience at Gnomon? And you can share that as like, well, here's an aspect of what it was like to be there, or if you have an anecdotal story you want to share, sky's the limit. But talk to us a little bit of what it was like just to be a student there for the 2 years.
Well, so when I went there, most of the people who went there were not from California. So they all kind of came, international and from different states and, different countries, all that kind of stuff. So, and it was really small. I think in my group was like 9 people or something like that at the time. So we kind of just like started to bond and become friends, and you kind of become this friend group, with high school and college. It's like, I grew up with this person, but it's like, no, we all are just meeting each other for the first time.
Yeah.
And it was unique because you're all different. You don't have the same musical taste because, like, in high school you haven't made friends that, you don't grow that. So there's so much diversity, which makes it so interesting and also inspiring. And with all those people, like, I made some of the friends that I have like for the rest of my life through Gnomon, because we're spending so much time together, and we're also going through the same struggle because it's really, really hard, and you sometimes see other people struggle. And with that sense of community, you want to bring them up. You want to help out this person. You want to help out that person. And then when you're struggling, they can kind of support you. So kind of to get through Gnomon, I felt was less of an individual effort and more of like a team effort with that group, like digital production and entertainment. We all kind of pushed each other, even though we all separated into different disciplines, especially like out in the professional world. It was still like something that was amazing. And they also had, those gallery shows, and all these different talks. I mean, it was an environment that you were just like fully immersed in that I mean, I'll never experience that again. And I don't think many professionals do. It's hard to like go to all these different functions all the time, but like a lot of it was happening at Gnomon.
Yeah.
Right. So you were just there all the time, like seeing it, hearing different names. And then some of those people were your instructors, and you're just like, oh shit, this guy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you feel like, especially that you mentioned that team effort, right? Like, I almost hear you saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it was like, I couldn't have gotten through school on my own. I needed my peers.
No way.
Yeah. So how do you feel like did that experience help prepare you for working on a team in a studio?
Yes, I think it gave me a good mentality of like how a team functions. It's much different in a professional world, right? When like, people's livelihoods are at stake when it comes to like the professional environment, right? So there is a difference. When it's a friend, you can kind of say things, and kind of maybe critique them a little bit more like personal, and then hang out, and then have there's all these different social things that you can kind of do in that friend/school environment that you might not necessarily be able to do in the professional environment. But there are definitely things like camaraderie and knowing that no one is bigger than the project, right? So like ego kind of gets like a little bit stripped down, and then also understanding that everyone has unique values, right? Like, just because this person can't do what I do as good as I can doesn't mean they're less valuable, because you're going to realize that person also has another skill that you don't have. And then if you guys collaborate and combine those skills, you can create something that's better than either of you can do on your own. And like, that's like how games are made. Like, none of us can really, make a game like a AAA game on our own. We need so many different types of disciplines, so many different types of people, and you need to appreciate and value those people. So yeah, I think it helped, but the work environment is definitely different as well.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I love the way that you said it too. I mean, when I talk to people in studios asking the questions like, what are you looking for in prospective hires? aside from, the portfolio and the technical skills, what you talked about 100% across the board, everybody's looking for someone who's a team player. Their ego's not bigger than the game or the project that you're making, and not, if there's comparison being made and contrast being made between people, it's only to see the skills that they have that you don't have, as opposed to somehow that one-upmanship, because that just doesn't last. People that are that way don't necessarily get hired again.
No, people don't want that in a team, right? Like that introduces toxicity. If everyone can kind of collaborate and value each other and respect each other, that's going to go a long way. Like, you have to appreciate what other people do. And I understand, right? Like, we're all artists. Like, there's times where you see stuff on ArtStation and you get a little jealous. And I've experienced it in the industry too, where like people want to, crap on other people's work, right? But it's not because their work is bad. It's because they kind of want to put someone else down to make themselves feel better, right? That happens in school. That happens, in your friend groups. That's also going to happen in like the professional environment. More so when you have a bunch of like, artists where they're showing you work. It's very vulnerable, especially to be a visual artist, because you're showing somebody something that you're like, hey, do you like this? So, it's definitely interesting.
No, and thank you for unpacking that, because I think that's so vital and so important. People get so focused on things like, well, I have to be super talented, or I have to be the best in the room. But people forget that one of the best things you can do to prepare yourself for the industry is like literally learn how to be an awesome person and be a good team player. So you taught at Gnomon for a while, right?
I did for 2 semesters. I wish I could have taught longer. It was one of the craziest like learning experiences. Because that's just, being a teacher is just such a different skill set, right? That you don't necessarily have. You really appreciate all the amazing teachers, that I appreciated like everybody that I had after that experience, because it was tough. But yeah, I did for two terms. Or 2 terms, and then I moved to Seattle. Yeah.
So you go through Gnomon, and you're finishing up. You went through the 2-year program, and now you're sort of launching into the wide world and looking for work. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like. Your education's behind you. You've got your reel, and now you're going out there.
For me, it was nauseating, because you get out there, and then it's just everybody you're sending your reel to. First of all, after you graduate Gnomon, people are going to look at your reel, right? Like, that's the experience that I had. Like, there was interest, right? But you're now constantly being judged, and being in these situations that you might have not been in before. Like, all job interviews that I was in previously was like for a pizza place, right, where I wanted like to deliver pizza, or stuff like that. But then you walk into like a studio, right, like Blur or like the Mill, and you sit into a room, and they play your reel, and they sit in silence, and this person just starts talking to you. I mean, just kind of understanding how different places interview was really nerve-wracking to me. And also, I did the thing of like, I was waiting there. I had a studio that I really, really wanted to work for, but they weren't necessarily responding to me. So I accepted an offer from another studio. And then, but then that other studio that I really wanted to work for, they called me back, and they were like, hey, you can come over here. So then I had to cancel that one. And I was like, wow, I just So, and then they were like, this is super unprofessional. And I was like, I'm blacklisted from the industry. After this job, I'll never work again. They're going to tell everybody, because you just, as a young person, you think that way, right? Like, you think every single person is going to have an impact on your career, because especially you hear this term like blacklist and don't and so I was so nervous, and I'm just a young guy, and I didn't know exactly like, what do people want to see? Do they want to see, do I show too much? Do I show too little? And then you really realize, like, after years, that to keep everything as simple as possible. You don't need to have printouts of your topology, or show pictures of your, UVs or whatever. really, if they see you work and if it looks good, it is good, they'll be happy, and they might ask to see more if they're interested.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, no, it was tough going into the real world.
Yeah, and it also sounds a little bit like, because I've talked with artists, I've talked to people that are sort of like, it's hard enough just to get somebody to look at my reel, but you're kind of having the problem of demand. Like, people were looking at your reel, they were like, oh, okay, who's this guy? Was it because they knew where you went to school? Was it because where you were putting your reel? Like, what kind of led to that?
Right. I don't want to make it seem like there was a ton of demand. There was two there was two studios who were interested.
That's two more studios than a lot of people out there.
Right, right.
That are grinding. Yeah.
I think it was because the person at Gnomon was really good. Like, at the time, I believe it was Shannon Wiggins.
Oh yeah, Shannon's awesome.
Is she still there?
Oh yeah.
Oh great.
She's a placement ninja. Yeah.
Yeah, she really helped me. She was like, "Hey, do you want to talk to, this place? Or I showed you reel to this person, and they might be open, but are you? You know what I mean?" And she really helped me kind of go in this direction. Gnomon really helped me find like how to send a reel, where to send it to, who is interested, and also those studios can also just go to Gnomon and be like, who do you got who's good, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they could be like, well, I have these people, and they're like, yeah, because we're looking for, we know the school has a good reputation of producing good artists, and we know the teachers here, and everybody knows everybody anyway, because the industry is small enough that they could be like, hey, how was a student? Oh, this person was a really nice person, right? And then they'll be like, I'm interested. And back to your point, they're like, no, this person was an asshole, but they were amazing. That person's not going to go anywhere, like, when it comes to that, just because of that. So I think that it just really kind of they kind of guided me. I wasn't necessarily like out on my own right away.
Yeah. No, and we'll actually be talking with Max Dayan about that next Friday, talking about like, what makes a hireable artist, and what makes a person that can build a career. Because it's more than just one thing. It's a lot of different things, a lot of different skill sets that have to come together. And also, just like you talked about, the courage just to put yourself out there, and subject yourself to a process that you hadn't experienced before.
Absolutely. Max was actually one of those teachers that I was thinking about when you were like, which teachers kind of like that you really appreciated once I started to teach. I was like, oh man, Max is just, because he was just like, there was so much charisma, right? And just so unique, and kind of like was harsh, but made you really want to learn and be good, and then like be impressive. So yeah, it's definitely one of the teachers or one of the instructors that I learned from. And there's tons of others as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So okay, you're out there, you're working. Let's talk a little bit about character art, the different things that you've worked on, the different types of things that you've done. Sure. And I don't know, did you have anything you wanted to share from your screen? Any visuals you wanted to put up today, or?
I mean, I could share some stuff, but
it's not required, but yeah.
Sure. I can actually talk about like how, like, what the progress was of my career, because it didn't necessarily start like in character art or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
The first one I got was I was an intern at Blur, and I was like doing scene assembly, because even when I got out of Gnomon, I didn't necessarily know 100% that I wanted to do character art. And here I can like, let me see if I have anything. Well, no, because now all my stuff is character art. But when I first got into the industry, it was like doing compositing and scene assembly, and I like Nuke and render layers and all that kind of stuff. And then eventually, after that internship ended, I went to Cloud Imperium, and here I can share my screen now.
Sure thing.
Okay, let me read the instructions.
Yeah, so we're just going to get that set up real quick.
I'm going to hit share screen. Let me know if you can see this screen.
Sure thing. We'll let you know when it comes through. All right, cool. We can see it.
You can see it?
Yep.
So I essentially just started off as like a hard surface concept artist, right? So these are some of the things that I started to do like as like super junior. This is when I got hired at Cloud Imperium Games. They were making, or they are still making, a space sim called Star Citizen, and like I was working under another a senior senior concept artist at that time, kind of like making weapons for ships, because they had these like super detailed ships and stuff like that. And then they would say, okay, we need a battery pack or whatever, and they need to have these 3 sizes, and they need to fit modularly. And I was good at like hard surface stuff at the time, or I was becoming, like, I guess you would say, like, tolerable. When I see this now, of course, you're just like, oof, this is like really, really rough. I didn't really necessarily know what I was doing, but at the time it was a learning experience. And then I got to start doing like a little bit more character centric stuff, which was cool, because they after doing ships for a while, I don't think I was particularly good at it. I don't think I particularly liked it, but I always thought like the lure of sci-fi and characters was really, really interesting to me. So then I just started off by doing like little helmet designs for them. And at this time, I was thinking like, I could just like, if they like this concept, I've already done it in 3D, like maybe I could retopo it and then, bake it and it could become like a character asset or something like that. But, you wouldn't just ask that as a company, hey, can I transfer from concept artist to character artist? But I was definitely becoming more interested.
Yeah.
And then they let me do some stuff. Here's some more things. And these are just like, what does a fire chief look like in space, right? And we took a lot of the inspiration from like aircraft carriers, of course, like this 100% from those guys on an aircraft carrier. This from like a fighter jet mask. All these different types of things. And this was, how does this open? How does it close? All these are kind of like just, decimated and done in Keyshot. Here, I'll stop sharing now.
These are really cool, by the way. I mean,
thank you.
For you, it's something that's old and you've seen a lot, but I think it's really cool to see that. But also so good to hear a little bit more about the actual job, right?
Yeah.
I think anybody who hasn't had the experience with the industry or doing some sort of creative work or commercial art, it's hard to understand. Like, people think that, concept artists just, get to draw the raddest stuff all day long, talk to us a little bit about, because it's still really cool, but you also need to kind of show up to something that maybe isn't the most awesome, like the highest on your checklist of stuff that you want to do.
Right, totally. Like that battery pack stuff. Like I'm not super interested in variety of battery packs, but it's necessary for the game, right? And you're a contributor, and you can hope that all you can hope is that you can get to do something that you want to do. But most of the time, it's doing what you have to do, right? Which is, and be a team player and put it towards the project. And then you start to realize like you might not be a good fit for that. Like for ship design and for the interiors and corridors and stuff like that. I think that I was tolerable. Like I was able to do it at a mild professional level, but was I exceptional? No. Was I inspired? No. Was I really putting a ton of value towards the project? Maybe for what I was getting paid at the time, but like what was the room for growth? But then starting to do some of the character stuff and getting really, really into that. And then they started to like it. And then when, I had a producer who, because like I said, I would never ask like, hey, transfer me over to the character department or whatever, demand that. But he said, hey, someone in the UK has just left the position. Do you want to maybe be start dabbling in character art? Not even a title change at the time. Start dabbling in character art here in Los Angeles. And then I was like, yes, 100%. And then, from there I started, sculpting like full characters, and, it started to work out. And then they kept giving me, here's another one. Well,
how do you think, I mean, I have a couple ideas of my own because of what you shared already, but tell us a little bit, how did he know to ask you if you were interested in doing that?
The producer?
Yeah.
I think that he just liked the character art stuff more that I was doing than the
Yeah.
concept stuff. And, you know, maybe maybe when we were like hanging out at lunch or something like that, I might have like I might have expressed interest in like, hey, if there's ever, something open, not like demanding or anything, but like in passing, like, oh, I really like I'm trying to do character art. I have some characters that I've done at Gnomon, and so then when a position opened up, he asked me. Of course, it was like at a very junior level at the time, and he did it in a really great way where it was like not a ton of pressure. He's like, can you help out? And then that started working out really well.
Well, and I'm not trying to ask you, wasn't trying to ask you a leading question, but I do think you're mentioning a couple things that I think are really, really important, especially for younger artists that might be aspiring. And you're right. It's not like you can just go in and throw your weight around as a junior artist, say, well, this is what I really want to do, everybody, so put me over here. But, I'm looking at the designs you're presenting, and there's a couple really important things I'm seeing. Number one, you were showing your interest in the thing that you really wanted to do by bringing that into the thing that you're currently being asked to do, right? Like you're doing some amazing helmets, and you're like making these really rad because you're imagining what kind of character the helmet's going to go on and what would the rest of the character look like. And the other thing you mentioned that I do want to pause and put a little bit of a spotlight on because it's so important. Earlier when you said, I made this helmet, but I knew that I could say to them, hey, I also know how to like retopo this and like get it ready for use. Right. You knew more of the pipeline than just the one thing you were doing.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. And I expressed that to my lead at the time because my lead didn't know, like when you do one-on-ones, sometimes it can feel like really comfortable. You can kind of tell them what your career aspirations are. So like I said, like I didn't throw my weight around, but I did kind of maybe express to my lead who might have spoken to the producer and say, hey, Omar actually has some other skills, and then he might have helped me move towards my career goals, right? So I kind of said, because I couldn't show them that I knew how to retopo in the sense that like I didn't have any retopo tasks, but I could tell him and he could say, hey, he knows how to do that. And then it's like, okay, well, retopo this. Why don't you do this? And then UV it, you do it, and it works. And, then all of a sudden you're on your way.
Yeah, no, it's so good. Because again, a lot of younger artists, sometimes the mentality can be like, well, I just want to do this part of the pipeline. I just want to be an animator, or I just want to focus on being a concept artist. And they think, well, if I only spend my time learning that one thing and become, really good at it, then I'll get my dream job right away. And that's so rarely the case. You got artists out there that they build multiple skills and they're able to make room for themselves by the way that they serve the project, which is, if I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like that's essentially what you were doing that helped you to get movement.
Totally. So yeah, I was definitely, but if you're, just super amazing at like, drawing characters as a concept artist, there's a spot for you.
Sure.
When it comes to like character art, I don't see it as often. Of course, outliers do exist, but I feel like for what I do specifically, there's so many skills that you have to know that are not necessarily exactly like, I just like sculpting in Zbrush. Okay, that's cool, but I'm going to have texturing tasks that need to be done. I'm going to have retopo tasks. I'm going to have UV tasks. I'm going to need you to explore how to, how are we going to do fur on this creature? All these different types of things. How are we going to paint faces? How are you going to do subsurface? All these different types of very technical things. But for someone who's really amazing at one specific aspect of it, like let's say sculpting, for example, I personally would not have a 100% dedicated sculptor on my team. It might work for other teams, but if I needed that, I might just get that externally. I might like contract someone out, a freelancer who could provide that for me, and then we would take that internally and leverage someone's expertise if we needed that.
Sure,
but I haven't done that like too often because generally, I've been very lucky to have really amazing sculptors who can also texture, on our teams.
Yeah. Well, and it would seem that like, especially as a younger or just inexperienced artist just getting out there, It seems like it helps to not have to wait for just one perfect type of job to come your way, but to be able to occupy more than one type of opening to kind of break in there. But that's not to say that the sort of the solo specialist route is not a viable option. But
Right.
no, I was very intrigued by your story. So yeah, tell us more. Because you sound like you're about to get into, and then I started getting to do rad characters.
Yeah. Oh, I guess that's how it went. I mean, like, yeah, I started to do like get cool characters, and then they were like, all right, well, you're a pretty junior character artist, which I was at the time, and they're like, but we like the work that's happening here in Los Angeles. Why don't we grow the character team here? And then I was able to get another Gnomon person, a friend of mine. I don't know exactly like the history of events, so I might be wrong, but this guy named Shane Hessler, who's a really amazing character artist, he was able to come on board, and then we kind of had like our mini team, and that grew. I think there's some other Gnomon grads there too now. I can't remember if Eric Ortiz was a Gnomon grad, but I think he was. He came on board and started to do some great work, and then I kind of had this guy James Koo kind of came on as our principal like character artist, and he brought everybody's game to like the next level. I think he was like the first industry vet that kind of essentially came and taught like us juniors. And then once we had someone who like really knew what they were doing and did everything that we could do at a better level, then the whole team just started rising. You could just see the work just rise up. And then we actually started to make like industry competitive characters, because we had this like figure who was like, here's how you texture a face. Like, you don't do it. You bring it into Mara. Here's the technique, like follow my steps. Then you do that, and it looks amazing, and he's been doing it for, I don't know, 20 some years, and he's still there, I believe. And that's when we started to really become like a fully functioning character team, like tech art, animation, like not us doing that, but like really understanding that. What's perf like? Because we were really just kind of juniors teaching ourselves. And eventually we got to a point where, we were really effective. I felt like, problem solving mostly.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about your experience in doing character art. And I think, and bearing in mind too, that, some of our listeners who may not have the same experiences, it might even be like a new term, like character art. Isn't that like character concept art? Like what are the differences, and what is it that you like about doing that?
Sure. I think every studio has a unique kind of take on like what a character artist's job responsibilities are, to kind of fit the production, what the product is. For me, and what my experience has been mostly is a character artist is there to take the vision of the concept and then bring it into essentially like static reality, right? And we want to try to keep as much of that emotion and story and effort that the concept artist did, and try to do it justice in the digital world, but also thinking about technical parameters. Because I'll give you an example. Like, the concept artist draws a fur cape, right? But we can't get a fur cape into game because it's just too expensive, right? What's another viable option? Can we do it, and then we'll work back, but we'll be that person who's like, hey, I know this looked amazing. I tried it. It didn't work. It's too costly. What are the other options? And then you kind of bring that in, and that requires, sculpting, retopology, UV, understanding of animation, like where to put your lines and stuff like that. Texturing in sometimes multiple different packages, and then staying organized and giving a good and nice clean file to tech art, because you don't want to be one of these dirty artists who like names a bunch of things randomly and just hands off a file that someone has to like reverse engineer. You want to give them something that's clean and structured, and then they come back, and then you work with those problems, right? Like, you're really someone who's there to take a character and get a character in the game, and also figure out how they work. Do they change outfits? Okay, if they change outfits, where do they change it from? Okay, this character puts on a glove. What happens to their hand? Do I keep their hand under the glove? When the hand bends, does it penetrate the glove? Like, okay, let's cut off the hand. How do we cut off the hand? I don't know. Let's talk to tech art, right? So there's like this collaboration between concept and tech art that goes back and forth between character art. So yeah, I think like we're we're these like tradesmen in this art of bringing a character into the game, right? And then I think like the animators and like the riggers and those people like bring it to life. Like there's nothing like seeing a character move for the first time. That's when you really know if it like looks good, because just having a character in A pose or T pose, it just, no matter what, it's never going to look awesome, even if it's the coolest sculpt. But once it starts moving, you're just like, oh yeah, like there's the essence of this character, right?
Yeah, no, and it's I hear you saying too, like, again, I hear you talking about this value of like, yeah, you can be 100% amazing concept artist, but it super helps you to know what the job of the character artist looks like, so you can make your concepts work with that. And the same for the character artist, right? Is tech art going to hate what you've done in 3D because they can't work with it? So you need to know. Yeah, right. But if you can be even better at helping to solve those problems for them before they get the model, that's part of that. I keep hearing you come back to team, right? Like it's about serving the team, making the team better. And character art's really cool because it's not like character artists don't design. You're taking
not at all,
and then you're refining that design, so you're designing it more, like your example with the cape.
Yeah, and also sometimes like a concept artist might give you something that's more rough because it might not be worth it. It's a pedestrian, right? So the character is not going to be front and center on screen for 20 minutes. So they're going to give a little bit less time, and then what you do is you kind of improvise. And from I think character artists who've worked quite a bit can generally be pretty good at or oftentimes are really good at concepting at the same time, like being able to iterate. Of course, it's more expensive for a character artist to concept in 3D than a concept artist to concept in 2D, but it's also fun, to do that. And when you have that opportunity, you can really look forward to it. And there's, just in my experience, there's so many opportunities to put your own artistic take onto a concept and make it better. And and generally it's encouraged, right? Because if it looks good, it is good.
Yeah.
So when something just looks badass, everyone's stoked.
Well, and the other thing I think is really cool about character art, really anyone who's working on the game asset, is you're literally making the thing that the person's going to see on screen. Sometimes sometimes I hear stories from concept artists like, I came up with this really cool concept, but it had to change as it went down the pipeline. And it's like, the game doesn't take, unless it's a splash screen or something like that, game doesn't take the concept art and insert that into the game. Like, so the character artist is the person that gets to say, this is what the audience is going to see. Like, this is how this character is going to exist in this world.
Right.
That's cool.
I mean, sometimes concept art totally makes it into games, right? Like,
oh, for sure.
In some aspects. But in character art specifically, it really is the really the inspiration for us is that concept art, and getting their reference to is really important. And also the collaboration between the character artist and the concept artist is an essential one, right? Because then you guys can kind of create the character together. Like, I can't do this bracelet. Can I get another one? Then you guys can kind of work together. It has to be this size because the character has a sword and he blocks it. He blocks something with this pauldron or whatever. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, let me design this really cool pauldron. And he does it, and you're like, okay, what if it needs to open up from here? I can cut it down. It's like, oh, that's good. Like there's definitely a huge collaboration. Between all departments.
Yeah, no, I could totally, I understand what you're saying. We were speaking recently with Della Longfish and Raphael Grassetti over at Santa Monica Studios, and they're such a tight knit pair, right? Because that's what they do. Like, Della's wrangling all the concepts for characters, and then Raph's got to interpret that or know how to get artists to interpret that into 3D. And it's such a vital conversation.
It's a skill. I respect those guys immensely, and it's like it takes a lot of effort to do that and do it effectively. Yeah. I mean, I'm still learning how to do it effectively.
Well, I think it's funny. No matter who you talk to, they'll all say that. I'm still learning. I was talking recently with Craig Mullins about digital painting on the stream, and he was like, "Well, I don't know if I'm the godfather of digital painting." It's like, come on, man. Yeah. And I think that's what I like about the art world. At least the ones that have got to work with teams, generally fairly humble people. And that's really cool. Okay, so we've had just a couple questions sort of come in so far, and sorry guys, I should have mentioned that earlier. Feel free to type questions in the chat, by the way. If you got questions for Omar, that's the other thing we want to be able to do is address some of the stuff that you're curious about. We've got an amazing character artist working in studio on some really cool games here, and we want to address whatever questions you have. So we do have one question that's come in. Let's see. From Prime Gaming saying, how do you like to approach texturing with your characters?
That's a really good question. Usually I just kind of like block out what the main like focus areas are and make sure that there's like if I'm creating a texture from my own imagination that's not done through a concept, I'll try to see like what is the focus of this character, because oftentimes it's the face, but it doesn't always have to be the face. And then I'll kind of make that like give that the strongest impression and then kind of lead out from there. But on a more technical side, when I'm baking, I bake a lot of like material IDs, so I keep my files like extremely organized. I try to keep my materials clean within Substance Painter. And then what I do is I try to make sure all the materials essentially get on the character at their roughest form as soon as possible. And then once they're there, then I can kind of start tweaking the colors a little bit, right? And trying to make it really like fit together cohesively. Once it fits together cohesively, then I'll start to focus on like those details that I think people are like interested in, like edge wear and scratches and all that kind of stuff. And of course I use tons and tons and tons of reference. And also whatever package I'm using, if it's Unreal, if it's Substance, I make sure that I'm doing the correct material workflow, right? Is it metal rough? Is it spec gloss? Is it something completely different that I've never even heard about, like a Toon shader or something I've never used, but I assume to be different. So yeah, there's all different types of way, but I would say the first thing I try to do is find out where the focus is, get everything on as soon as possible, so I can at least like see the whole thing together, rather than like having the whole character white and then focusing on like one material, getting that perfect, and then jumping to the next one. I throw a bunch of crappy materials on, and then I just start tuning.
That's awesome. I love listening to artists talk about their process too. It's because it's so important. And it's funny, like literally the process you just described for texturing, I mean, it's the same process for making a great painting too. Like don't paint the one tree for 5 hours,
Yeah.
gotta get it all on the canvas so you can see it in context.
Yeah. I work macro to micro. Like I always say, like, and you end up sounding like a parrot because you said it so many times, but like primary read, secondary read, tertiary read, and like work in that order. Like I don't worry about detail. I don't even worry about like secondary detail until my primary detail is in. Once that's in, like I want to block out before I sculpt anything. And then I'll start sculpting stuff. And then once it's sculpted, then I'll do like the surface detail. But like that's the order I work in. And sometimes I really want to jump in and just sculpt the hell out of something. But I have to have that discipline to not do that, because it's going to save me time in the end.
Totally. Yeah. No, I'm so glad you're talking about that, because I think that I know that like when I was a younger artist, like I just wanted to do exciting things, especially when I was working on my own work, so it's like you're doing that thing and then you realize I just wasted 3 hours because this doesn't even work with everything else.
Right.
And you're talking about, these are essential design principles, right? Like these are things that will always be true, whether you're texturing or doing something else.
Yeah, and you see it on, I mean, I think one of the big things now is like there's a lot of portraits going around, right? You can see the big thing is like the most important thing about a face is like the primary forms and the proportions of a face. If you don't pay too much attention because you're really excited to sculpt the wrinkles and scars, it will never, it's just never going to look good. It'll be like a super rendered, poorly sculpted thing, you know, like you put the skin shader on, you did everything like that, but you know, you really should spend a really long period of time on the primary forms, because then it's just going to benefit everything else down the line.
Yeah, but you can see all the pores.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so true. Let's see. Another question from Joe Bedwell. He says, do you think that a virtual internship is possible for a concept artist? Is that even a thing? It's probably even, like, I'm assuming it's like a COVID related question too, right? Because we're all in isolation.
I mean, I would assume it would be a thing. I mean, like we have like programmers we've hired virtually, you know? So
oh yeah. Yep.
We can like hire a programmer virtually and somehow like get them the equipment that they need through, like, you know, every studio is doing it a different way, and it's like it's pretty complicated right now, but we're making it work and we're still making games. So a virtual internship for a concept artist, I mean, I haven't heard about it because, you know, but I'm sure it could be a thing.
Yeah. There's, you know, there's only a gain to be had. So, you know, Joe, if it isn't a thing, be bold and ask questions, you know, hit people up, say, can I do some stuff for you? You never know.
Right.
Let's see here. Yeah, they're really starting to come in now. We got another question. How do you maintain the topology in character art for animation?
Could you repeat that question one more time?
So I think they're talking about, you know, optimized topology that will work well with animation. So when you're a character artist, how do you go about, you know, maintaining your topology with the fact that, you know, that elbow's got to stretch or be animated as it goes further down the pipeline?
A lot of that comes with experience and talking to your tech artist and, you know, the person who's animating it as much as possible, you know, or the, you know, the rigger, who's ever the next step in the pipeline. They'll generally give you feedback. And then once you've heard that feedback enough, you'll kind of know what it's like. Also, there's Polycount, which has examples all over of really good what's smart topology for a way that a finger bends, right? I could just throw edge loops in there, but if I have more edge loops at the top of the knuckle and I collapse the edge loops, you know, where it starts to actually bend, then the finger's going to bend, you know, properly, as opposed to just kind of like mushy collapse. And those are things that you learn, right? Like, I'm going to have something that has cloth sim on it, right? I want it to be as quadrant as possible because I know the way the simulation works, it doesn't like random verts in random places. You know, you want it as smooth and as dense as possible. And these are things you learn, you know, in time. Like for games, if we're going to have a cape that's flowing, you know, which we do in like Ghost with tons of flowing capes, we model it flat so that we don't model it wavy or anything that looks good. We model it completely flat, and we quad it out as much as possible, and then we give it to them, and then they are the ones who simulate it and let the wind blow through it and do all that stuff. So there's certain things that you learn. Of course, you know, where like you want the topology of the face to go with the muscles. You want like areas of high deformation, shoulders, elbows, wrists, fingers, the knees, ankles. You want those to be more dense so that they could bend. Areas with low deformation, calf, thigh, bicep. Well, I mean biceps now because they have like, you know, you can now like deform them in real time, which is amazing. But you know, sometimes they just be like tubes, right? So those areas that you could deform more and deform less, add more topology, remove some topology.
Yeah, well, and all that stuff is super fascinating too. You know, I've done more concept art, and I've just recently started learning a lot more about 3D. But like, you know, topology can be really challenging, but it's also like really creative, you know, problem solving. Like
and different studios do it different ways. Like different studios will do topology different ways, depending on like how they texture them. Like if I'm going to have a tiling pattern go across like my collar and then go down like my shirt, I want those to be as quadrant as possible, as evenly UV'd as possible, and everything like that, because I'm going to have something that tiles. And if I have one long rectangle instead of a square, it's then going to stretch, and that's going to look weird, right? So it can even topology can influence the way that you texture, not only the way that something animates. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, we've got another question here. What's your thinking system when you are making a 3D character from a 2D concept? Do you have kind of, when you're analyzing a 2D concept and you're thinking about how you're going to translate that into 3D?
I still do what I learned at Gnomon, which is just like a concept breakdown. That was like one of the first. That's one of the tools. I think that a lot of times some people will look at a concept and be so inspired by it, they want to start right away and just like have the concept and just start sculpting it. And some people are amazing at that. I'm so bad at that. I need to like take the drawing and then break it down, like literally with like red outlines and green outlines. Like this is the cape, this is the wrist, this is cloth, and then I'll color those in. This is a cloth material, this is a skin material, this is a threaded rope material, and that's going to be orange, this is going to be blue. And I'm just drawing in layers in Photoshop, and I try to like break the concept down as much as possible. And then from there I'll go to the next stage, which is, okay, this is cloth. What kind of cloth is it? Is it cotton? Is it linen? Is it this? And then I'll start to get references of those, right? And I can get references of the macro, which is like, what kind of fiber is this? And the micro, and then get references of the macro, which is like, okay, so he has rope around his forearm, this character individually. So I'll look at like different movie characters in movies, right, who have like that tied around. Like maybe somebody in Star Wars has like that kind of like thing that's tied around their hand, and then I'll see it and it's kind of like ripped up, and it might have like one thing that kind of hangs down and that looks really cool, or something, or the way that it goes around their hand. And then I'll literally like copy that. I'll be like, this is really cool from a movie. It's kind of like the concept. It's close enough. The concept is kind of just painter strokes, but I know what it is. It's communicating, wraps around the hand. I'm going to take these ones. I'll just kind of take it, simplify it for myself, and then break it down. Other people work totally differently. I've seen amazing character artists literally just look at a concept, throw like a few images of reference, not even a ton of reference, and then just jam on a character. And oftentimes those are more experienced character artists who've done it 1,000 times. So they already know, like, this is the 15th wrap around a hand I've done. I'm just going to pick the one from memory that I've had, have one reference of a wrap on the screen, and then just do it. I'm not there yet, so I still like to gather a decent amount of reference. But I did get advice not to gather too much from an artist one time when I like had a reference board, and he's like, dude, this is too much. You need to focus. And I thought that was a massively beneficial piece of advice. Was good. Not to over reference.
Yeah. Or like over referencing like one particular thing, you mean?
Totally. Yeah. Or just like gather reference that's like kind of similar, but not really similar. Like if you have 3 images that have really strong design language and that they kind of match, it's better than having like 15 images of similar ones, because you're going to grab from this reference, and then you're going to grab from this one, and you're going to grab from this one. And then kind of when you put them all together, it doesn't really speak to itself, because you kind of took from a bunch of different places, but sometimes it does,
Yeah, no, I actually recently learned the similar kind of thing at Gnomon in a creature design class. It's like just picking out a gazillion images of reference is one thing, but like curating your reference and understanding why you're putting that reference on your board is so important.
100%
can speak. Yeah. Let's see here. Make sure I'm not missing anybody's question here. We've got several that have come in. All right. So in which game engines have you worked? Someone's just curious to know what kind of game engines you've worked in.
I've worked in CryEngine, which is also similar to Lumberyard, which is what I worked on Amazon. They're very similar engines. I think Amazon brought CryEngine and it became Lumberyard. I've worked in UE4. I've never worked in Unity, and I've worked in proprietary engines.
Cool. And I'll put a little sidebar on there, and I realize this could be like an entire stream or discussion unto itself. But any thoughts from you kind of looking towards next year with Unreal 5 about what that could mean?
personally, I'm excited to play around with it because it's super fun, and I'd like to see, you know, what kind of projects are available for free, so I can reverse engineer it, and then, you know, maybe introduce that to my team, because that's what a lot of what we do too, is like see kind of what other people do, and then try to make it our own, or maybe even improve upon it and stuff like that. So, you know, as an artist, we steal all the time, so I'm going to be excited to see what I can steal from the pipelines that they make available, and maybe have it work for us. But yeah, for personal stuff, I will definitely be interested.
Yeah. Let's see. Someone's wanting to know, okay, it's an interesting question. I hope that I'm understanding it correctly. How tight is the relationship between the lead artist and the programming lead? Like, is there a lot of interaction there?
I mean, it depends. It depends. At some studios, almost none, right? At my current studio at Sucker Punch, a lot, especially with proprietary engines. Because when I was working in, you know, Obsidian, when we were working in Unreal 4, I could literally just look up a YouTube tutorial and make a shader, right? I don't have that expertise to know what the math behind the node is. But at a place like, you know, Sucker Punch, it's really important to work with them, like the programmers and the engineers. They're literally vital to every single thing we do. A shader, a texture compression, everything is they're critical. Anything we want to ask essentially has to go through them. Do they have time to do it? How important is it? So yeah, it depends on the circumstance, but in different situations, it's, you know, it can be critical or it could be almost non-existent.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so Pedro Veloso is asking, hi, how do you deal with tessellation in your characters? Do you use UDIM workflow?
Well, for games right now, we don't use, well, in our studio, we don't use UDIMs. Now that the new Substance Painter allows for UDIMs, we may, and there's PlayStation 5, you know, is coming out. We'll have to look into it, but we may start using UDIMs. We'll essentially just be taking what will benefit our workflow, and then hopefully use that. But since, you know, everything is kind of material driven, I had to have one UV sheet for material 1 and a separate one for material 2. It's kind of like working through UDIMs. I think the cool thing about what it could do is it could allow us for one material to now go to 2 separate UV sheets, like UDIM 1 and UDIM 2, maybe even 3, so that we can kind of plug and play one thing and it'll actually propagate to 3 things rather than duplicating a material and doing all that kind of stuff. So there's interesting things we could do with UDIMs. Tessellation, if we're talking about, like, you know, triangulation within a mesh when it goes from quads to tris in the engine, I don't really worry about it. If there's something that just triangulates in an odd way, like I have a square, right, and it's like not completely planar, and then it's bending upward, I'll just insert the triangle myself, just so that I force the triangulation the way that I want it once it gets in. And someone could say, hey, why'd you put a triangle here? And I could just say it was bending the wrong way, and they could say, that sounds great. You know.
All right. Let's see. Yash Singh is asking, how much time does it take to create the 3D character from an approved concept art? I'm sure that probably depends on the character, but let's say for a hero, not a background character. Let's say for a hero character, averagely, you know, how much time does it take?
It's almost impossible to estimate, and the only reason is there's so many different types of variables. Are we talking from scratch? Do I have an eyeball? Do I have a texture for that eyeball that I can use that I'm reusing from another character? Do I have teeth? Do I have to make the teeth? Okay, does this character have different teeth? What can I reuse? Because in a game environment, we're reusing things constantly, right? Like, I have the head topology that was already improved by, you know, the tech director, right? So I'm going to reuse that topology, but the head was scanned. And how much do I calculate the time that the people spent scanning the head and then doing those like animations and stuff like that? So we're talking, you know, a huge amount of time that you can extrapolate from a character. Like, do we do the hair, or can we reuse the cards? Like, is it a reuse hairstyle? So I think the simplest way I can describe this is like, let's just talk about a character outfit in a pre-existing pipeline, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll exclude the face and all that kind of stuff, just because it really can get very complicated, and it's gone through so many different departments. You know, it's crazy. So a character outfit, right? We could probably say somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, depending on complexity. If it's a boss, is it in a ton of cinematics, right? If it is, then maybe we want to spend more time. Is it the main hero of the game? And then does that hero only have one outfit? Because if that hero only has one outfit, we're probably going to want to spend more time because it has more screen time. So yeah. And then also, like, if you're doing it for personal project, like I'm going to sculpt a head and I'm going to sculpt the hair and I'm going to do that stuff, and I'm not talking about an in-game pipeline, you know, is it stylized? Maybe a little bit less time, 4 to 10 weeks, depending on how hard you want to go at it. But it can, if it takes you 20 weeks or if it takes you 6 months, you know, don't let it deter you. You know, if you spend 2 years on a project, you know, that's fine, as long as, you know, you're doing something. So I would say, if you're worried about, like, am I doing this fast enough? I wouldn't even worry about it, because it's kind of about, like, taking a project, finishing it, starting another one, right? Like, that's going to help you grow. That's going to really help you grow. Spending, you know, a tremendous amount of time on a head, you know, doing one head for 1,000 hours isn't going to be as good as doing, like, you know, 20 heads and just being like, this isn't good, but it's okay, I'm going to work on the next one. You know, be comfortable putting pencils down and being like, I'm happy with this. This is as good as I can get for right now.
Yeah. It can be so hard to realize, okay, this is done now. Like, it's better energy spent moving on to the next thing.
100%. And artists are usually never happy. So, like, be cool with that. And that goes for all art forms. Like, you can write a script and you could spend 2-3 years, like, writing a script to hell, right? But, you know, and that could be good. Or you could, you know, be one of the people who, like, writes, like, B horror movies and write, like, 20 scripts a year, you know, and that's just fun for you, however you want to do it.
Yeah. That's great advice. And then we've got another question. Should a character artist learn rigging? And they're saying, isn't this more a technical part? Can you talk about, like, would it be helpful for a character artist to learn something about rigging? How much should they learn?
I don't know how to rig, but I guarantee you it couldn't hurt. So if you want to learn, I think you should. It would probably make me a better character artist if I knew how to do it.
And your riggers would probably love you, right?
Yeah, they probably would.
If you could walk in and be like, I worked on this thing, but I'm really concerned how it's going to rig. You know, they'll probably just sing your praises. You know, what do I need to change? Yeah.
I mean, I've even heard of some character artists, like, in the industry, like, some studios require you to rig your own characters. I think it's less common now with how complex things are getting. But when characters were simpler, it wouldn't have been uncommon for a character artist to rig their own character and also possibly skin their own character. I've never done it, but I have heard of artists who have.
Yeah. Oh, here we got another question just came in. And this will probably be the last question we'll be able to take from the chat today, because we are at time, guys. But they're asking, what are the most important things you look for on a character artist portfolio? How do you value personal projects versus professional work in a portfolio? It's sort of a 3-part question. And how do you make a balance of it? Let's see here. Oh, yeah. This is so essentially they just want to know from you, your opinion, what you look for. If you got a character artist portfolio coming in front of you, what are you going to be looking for? And they're curious to know about the balance between the amount of personal work that might be in a portfolio versus actual projects.
If you're a junior, I don't even necessarily, or if you're starting out in the industry, if you have, like, bomb personal work, I'm not going to worry about any professional work, because you might not have had any professional work. I would say, like, just a few strong pieces. I generally don't like when you show your drawings from, like, middle school or something like that you got, like, an A on. That just, not because they're not amazing, but because they don't necessarily pertain to the job. And you're gonna oftentimes be judged on your worst looking work and what the date of that was, right? So what I would say is three to five strong pieces is better than like 8 to 10 pieces with 5 strong and then 5 that are mediocre. If you've been working in the professional industry a long time, then I would expect more professional work. A lot of times too, the professional work also has so many more constraints. So expect the professional work to look like 70% of what the personal work looks like. Because when you're doing personal work, you can use, anything, right? Software that you might not have gotten approved, your polycounts are higher, all sorts of different things. So know when you do see a character artist work that's professional, they are working in a constraint. What's the style? What's the project? Is it a creature? Is it not? So you take those things into account. But the personal work is a great eye to see what someone's interested in, right? Like if their personal work is a bunch of creatures, but they've mostly done characters, maybe because like they really want to be a creature artist, but they haven't necessarily had that opportunity. Can you give them that opportunity? So I do appreciate personal work. Another cool thing, like with one of the people that I saw, what I really liked was he had on his website, he had like a blog, and this blog, he was like, I'm going to I've never done photogrammetry. I'm going to scan a boot, right? So he like built a little green screen in his house, like a small one, and then like put a boot on like a Lazy Susan, and then like started to do like photogrammetry on that thing, and then kind of like wrote about it. And he's like, okay, then I'm going to try like a jacket. And yeah, I mean, all the stuff that he was doing like wasn't amazing. We have a scan stage. I can just scan a boot, what I mean, or not me personally, but like, we can get a scanned boot. But the fact that he was interested in that made me think like, oh, this is kind of somebody who's interested in the art form and is like researching it, and someone who I'd like to hang out with. And then that was like a big one, because I was like, oh, this guy like seems cool and interesting because he has, he's doing these kind of weird experiments in his house and he's like documenting it. He'd be fun to talk to. And you could tell he had a passion for it. Ended up being one of the best character artists I've worked with, and a good friend to this day. And you can kind of tell that. So it's a lot of both. But I would say, spend. This is important though. If you spend like 20 hours on a sculpt, don't just take a screenshot in Zbrush and then put it in your portfolio. You're not doing your work any justice. Focus. If you spend a lot of time on something, do it the justice of also presenting it well. Like give it nice lighting, and try to like get a high resolution image. There's so many people I see online that send portfolios where the sculpt is good, but the presentation is poor. And that's something that is a big like turnoff for me. Is because I'm like, all you needed to do was spend the time and this would be like amazing. But because you're presenting it poorly, like so yeah. And I'm sure Gnomon talks about that 1,000 times, right? I'm sure I got that from Gnomon probably.
The presentation refinement is like one of the pillars of a considerable portfolio. No, we have 4 pillars, and that's one of them. Absolutely, man.
Especially because the sculpts are so good. Like there's so much good work there. Just do your own work justice. And also, just don't throw 1,000 things. If you're like a professional who has 1,000 images of amazing work, that's a different, that's like a different caliber. That's a different person. But if you're trying to get into the industry, keep it small.
Yeah, super helpful perspective and advice. By the way, that's very comprehensive. I think the other thing about presentation, presenting it well and refining it, is you're not only respecting your own work, you're respecting the person who's taking time to look at it. Making it as easy for them to observe how awesome it is, rather than going like, does this look crappy because it's not presented well? Or most people reviewing portfolios just don't have time for that.
Also, I'm most likely not the first person to review your portfolio. So you're trying to impress someone who might not actually be a character artist first. So they might not even know what in the sculpt to appreciate. They might just see like, oh, this looks like a crappy image. I don't want to burden the character art team by reviewing this. So this goes in the no pile, even though you could be one of the more talented people there. or one of the more talented portfolios, most often you might not even be looked at by the character team until you've passed a certain, threshold.
Yeah, often it's that you're getting your work in front of a recruiter,
Mhm.
and a recruiter might have the same kind of eye as a person who's out there playing the game. So you gotta catch them at that level before it gets in front of artists further down the line.
Totally.
So I want to be respectful of your time, and there's kind of one last question that I like to close out with.
Sure.
And that is, considering, let's think of aspiring artists. So someone who is very interested in doing what you do, Omar, but they don't know, maybe they're the high school student who's like in an art class, or maybe they're a community college student who's starting to think about their career and what direction they want to go in. So what would be a piece of advice that you'd have for someone looking at this world, looking at what you do, and of course seeing all of it and going like, what do I spend my time doing? Like, how can I prepare myself right now? What would you have to say?
Try not to take yourself too seriously. Try not to stress yourself out, because that's going to make what you like to do, which I'm assuming is art, it's going to start to make it a chore when you start to put that pressure on yourself. So, have fun, enjoy what you do. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't put crazy parameters like I need to work 8 hours a day every day. Like, that stuff will come when it needs to come, and that'll happen, naturally, like once you have to do those things, like, and, really a disciplined artist, sometimes they do that and they give that kind of advice, but, love what you do it as much as you want to do it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And then, seek out avenues like Gnomon, and then maybe reach out to somebody who's like, what was your path, right? How did you get there? Talk to a recruiter, or, look online and post on a forum and be like, hey, are there any tutorials about subject A? I'm interested in it. And someone will respond and they'll give you tutorials on that subject, and you could watch them, and that'll kind of lead you down a rabbit hole, but don't get too stressed. Don't take yourself too seriously, and try to still have fun.
Yeah. And thank you. Awesome advice. And I continue to be surprised at how generous the art community is. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, for sure.
Be brave and ask questions, because more often than not, a senior artist is going to be excited to be able to help somebody who wants to do this, to be able to offer a piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So don't be afraid of that.
Josh Herman, who was my art director when I was at Cloud Imperium Games, like, he always would chat about whatever you wanted to chat about, and offer his expertise when you asked. It was never like, hey, I don't have time for you, because I'm just anybody. It's always been extremely generous. You know what I mean? Even at the higher levels, like art director levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Josh is awesome. He's actually been incredibly helpful to me and very generous. And I don't know if you know it, but he actually does that now as a stream. Every Wednesday from about 10 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon, he does an art jam.
Of course he would.
He's sculpting. I think lately he's been doing D&D characters, like a roll up a random character and be like, that's what we're sculpting today. But
that sounds like so much fun.
If you're looking for an avenue, he's there just taking questions from the chat while he's working. So
that's a perfect example of what I'm talking. He'd be someone to ask too. If you're in a jam, that he's doing that, go message him. He's been through the industry. He'll be able to tell you, if he's got great advice, I'm sure.
Awesome. Well, Omar, again, thank you so much for giving your time.
Thank you.
And it's been super fun chatting with you, and really helpful stuff. I know that I've learned a lot just listening to you this morning as well.
Oh, it's really nice. Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, I don't usually do these kind of interviews or talks, but I appreciate everyone taking an hour out of their day to listen to us essentially just chat. I know it's a long time, so I value your time.
Yeah, well, no, it's super helpful. I can't express that enough. I know that when I was really curious and wanting to learn, I started finding things like this, listening to people chat and listening to artists talk about what they do. So I know that I'm sure that you've helped out a lot of people today, just sharing your knowledge and your story. Be safe out there in Seattle.
Yeah, will do.
Hopefully, you know, we'll get through the apocalypse quickly, so that we can get back in our studios and our awesome workspaces and enjoy life in that way.
Oh man, I hope so. I can't wait to see people again.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree. It'd be really awesome to see another human not through pixels, right?
Right.
You know, actually in the flesh. So again, Omar, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
We're going to get ready, guys, to transition into the Gnomon presentation. So if that's something you're interested in, if you want to know how Gnomon is training artists for the kind of stuff that Omar's been sharing about, and what kind of, you know, what sort of education he went through, I'm going to be talking about that, be sharing a little bit about the digital production pipeline, for those that may want to know more. So stay tuned as we transition. I'll just take a couple of moments. But with that, I want to say thanks again to Omar, and hopefully we'll see you again soon here on the stream. It's been great having you.
Have a good one.
All righty. Okay, guys. Well, while I get the presentation ready, hang on just a moment here. Just need to move a couple of windows around. There we go. So we get my screen shared and get that up there. And yeah, I'm excited, especially after, you know, getting to talk to someone like Omar. I'm always very excited to share about what Gnomon's doing, because we do the streams this way. We'd rather start with the artists, so that they can build a context, and actually they're the inspiration for, you know, the kind of things that we're doing. So everything that Omar's talking about, if you're excited about hearing that, that's the context in which, that's the setup essentially for being able to share the information that I'm going to share with you now. So for those of you who might not be familiar with Gnomon, Gnomon is in essence a 3D art school. We're located in Hollywood, and we specialize in training artists for careers in digital production, disciplines like VFX, animation, and games, who we just heard from Omar, who's working in games. We've been around since 1997. We were started by a creature artist by the name of Alex Alvarez. So Gnomon was started by an industry artist as a place where industry artists could come and train. Because at that time, software like Maya that we'd heard about earlier was something that was in high demand, but few artists actually knew how to use it and knew that pipeline. So Alex started Gnomon as a place where industry folks could come and begin to learn this. And because the demand was so high, it very rapidly blew up, scaled up into a full-blown college. Now there's actually offering a degree program in doing these kinds of things. And over the years, we've been able to win a few awards. It's just giving you an idea that, you know, we've been around for a long time. We're very good at what we do. We've ranked School of the Year on a couple of times in the Rookies Awards, which you see up here on the screen. And that's an international competition. We've ranked #1 in the US for VFX, games, and animation, which is essentially our entire curriculum. And we've ranked #1 worldwide for VFX and animation. So because we've been doing this for a while, because we've been doing it since pretty much the beginning of this as being a very, you know, highly sought after a type of skill set in the industry, we are producing graduates that go on to work on some really amazing projects. So for example, on the screen here, you'll see some titles that should be familiar to you. Every one of these, this is just a small sampling of the amazing projects that have all had Gnomon alumni working on those projects. So that's one of the really huge focuses of why Gnomon does what it does, is that we are wanting to make artists industry ready. We are not wanting to just be teaching skills or techniques, and then, you know, you kind of go do what you want with that in the world. Our aim is not just to teach you skill sets, but also make you amazing at that, but make you ready to go work in the industry, like Omar was talking about. These are some of the studios that you may be familiar with who regularly hire Gnomon graduates. So very much an emphasis on making sure that those have knowledge get careers. So we're gonna hear from a few alumni right now through this video.
Someone recommended me checking out Gnomon. I didn't know actually anything about it. I first found the tutorials, and so I applied, I got in, and it was the best decision of my life. I'm Kirsten England, and I'm a technical visual effects artist at Naughty Dog. I originally was part of their foreground department in 2015. I was still in school.
I'm originally from Ohio. I grew up in a pretty small town there called Milan. Yeah, we came out here and visited the school and got a tour. just walking through like the sculpture lab here and everything. And yeah, it was just amazing. And I was like, wow, I really got to go here. My name is Tyler Bulliard. I'm currently a look development artist at Walt Disney Animation Studios. I started there in the talent development program as a trainee on Zootopia, actually. And then I've worked on every film since then.
It's funny to think that like 10 years ago, you know, I was working at Target and, you know, paying my way through Gnomon. And my name's Jay Machado. I'm a senior hard surface modeler at Industrial Light and Magic, and I've been there for about 5 years. Worked on a few things there, Transformers 4, Episode 7, Rogue One.
Everyone I graduated with within, you know, a month or two was working somewhere in the industry.
All right, so what did these artists learn while they were with us here at Gnomon? In a term, sort of a catch-all term, it's called digital production. Now, digital production is going to be talking about a lot of different types of skill sets and disciplines that all relate to the digital production pipeline. So these would be things like computer-based visual effects, character and creature design, digital sculpting, character and creature animation, environment design, lighting and rendering, matte painting and compositing, game asset creation, game engines, production workflows, and world building. And these skill sets translate into the following careers. So every single title that you see on the screen here represents its own career path, its own step or position within the digital production pipeline. So like we were talking about with Omar earlier, understanding, you know, all of the roles in the pipeline and what the person after you in the pipeline is going to have to do with what you're working on, it's very beneficial. And we teach all of that at Gnomon. So these would be things ranging from something that's going to be very visual art centered, things like character artist, which is what Omar does, or environment artist, all the way to technical artist, previs artist, riggers, and so forth. So I'm going to highlight just 4 of these careers just to give you an idea of how the diversity of types of jobs that are available in the industry for artists in this pipeline. So first we're going to look at are character artists. A character artist, you know, as we were talking about earlier on the stream today, is the artist that is sculpting the actual character or creature that's going to be on screen in a game or in a film, feature animation. This particular artist here is using a piece of software called Zbrush. And Zbrush is very powerful and essentially allows you to use traditional clay sculpting techniques with virtual 3D. So you're working with a virtual ball of clay and using traditional techniques to sculpt it out. And therefore, it's a very powerful tool for creating anything organic, whether that's a creature, a character, organic shapes found in nature like rocks, trees, and so forth. Zbrush is an amazing tool. This is also a great example of, you know, a position in the pipeline and the type of artist that, you know, probably is, you know, very visual arts leaning, right? Like someone who is sculpting a lot of characters, probably spending time drawing characters as well, is excited about creating art in that way. So this is a perfect position for someone who likes to do that sort of thing. Next up, we have effects artists. And as you can see here, effects artists work on incredibly complex sequences, often sort of the wow moment or the money shot, you know, of the blockbuster trailer that we're seeing. And because they're working on things like this that have millions upon millions of individually moving pieces and particles, a VFX artist is not going to be able to animate this traditionally, say like a character animator would, by moving each individual part by hand. What they're going to need to do actually is, you know, sounds a little bit more technical, but is really, really cool. And that is they're going to use software that is simulating physics. They have physics engines built into them for things like gravity, smoke, debris, wind, fire, you name it. And what they're able to do is they're able to use these engines to manipulate the geometry in the scene to make it look like it's really happening, like it's real smoke, or something as complex as, hey, a space station of a particular mass and velocity beginning to break apart because it was hit by an object of this mass and velocity in 0G orbiting the Earth. How do we make that look real? Well, that's where VFX artists come in. These tend to be artists that are both, you know, technical in the sense of they can look at something and find a creative way of solving a problem, but they're also very curious and looking around the real world and analyzing things and determining like, why does that work the way that it works? So whenever you see a brand new visual effect or something like that in a film, something, wow, I've never quite seen something like that before as a special effect in film. That's because there's a team of VFX artists behind that who are innovating, but they're doing it at the level of, figuring out how to simulate physics. So this is a great example of a position for a very highly creative type, but also someone that is, thinking of things like, like physics and how things break apart, how they move, and are willing to use software to generate those kind of things. And the result, as you can see, is visually stunning and a really important part of storytelling. Next up would be a compositor. And the compositor typically is towards the end of the digital production pipeline. And that is because they're not the one that creates all of the 3D assets or film plates that are going to be inserted or animation, things like that. They're the person that's receiving all those assets from the other artists and compositing it together into a scene. So for example, like the scene we see here, the tennis court is 3D geometry, actors in front of a green screen are playing tennis, buildings, more geometry, lighting and texturing is put on them, additional actors are inserted, and you wind up with a scene like this. This is actually an establishing shot from the film Wolf of Wall Street. This type of compositing is really being used quite a bit in these kind of moments in films, because this is really the director's way of telling you this is where the story is taking place, which usually requires some sort of an environment. Well, instead of that director needing to take the time and money to scout out the perfect location, to get permission to film there, hire actors and film crew. Instead, they can bring this idea for that moment in the story to a VFX studio and say, this is what we need. And everybody goes to work creating the assets for that scene, but the compositor is the person that kind of like a wizard weaves it all together into a moment like this that looks 100% real. And often, guys, we're seeing things in both films and commercials like this that we don't even stop to wonder whether it's a special effect or not. And that is because the compositor is doing such an amazing job with putting these things together. So let's go from kind of towards the end of the pipeline here, all the way back to the beginning and talk about previs artists. What previs artists do is like what a storyboard artist does for a film or a cinematic. And storyboards traditionally are 2D images that are hand-drawn and arranged sequentially, kind of like how a comic book is. And they have to tell the story of what's happening in a scene in a film. What previs artists do is they're taking that to the next level, and they're using animation to do that. So these artists are, they're more interested in the big picture, in the story that's being told. So these are previs animatics from the film World War Z. But as you can see, the previs artist isn't, taking the time to make the model that's supposed to be representing Brad Pitt in the scene to make it look exactly like Brad Pitt. Instead, they're getting everything together in the scene, the big picture, the broad strokes, so that they can animate all of it with simplified animation. They can control the camera angle, what kind of lens the camera is using. Is it a tight shot? Is it a wide shot? And they're arranging all the beats of that moment in the story. And these artists are going to be working very closely with the director and the cinematographer to get the story captured in this form first, so that they can put these animatics in front of the rest of the people in the pipeline. So they're all working from the same common vision and understanding as they're creating both CG assets, real world assets. People are scouting out locations and filming and so forth. So this is an example of, this would be a great position in the pipeline for an artist who is interested in 3D and animation, but at heart, they really want to tell a story. So they want to more rapidly iterate story as opposed to pixel perfect models. And they're interested in working with the director and the cinematographer to work all these aspects together to help create a compelling visual that becomes a template for the film to be made. All right. So with just 4 examples in mind of, very different kinds of roles that are out there for, people that have very different skill sets or inspired by different kinds of things, let's talk about how Gnomon is going about training for artists for those types of careers. So these are our academic offerings, and here's just a bird's eye perspective for you. These are all 4 of our offerings, starting with, in the upper left-hand corner, our Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in digital production. So this is a full-time 4-year college degree in everything that I'm talking about. Just to the right of it, we have something called our certificate program, which is a 2-year, more intensive, a little bit more advanced program, typically for someone who may already have a degree and is looking to come to Gnomon as a finishing school. On the bottom row here on the left, you see the foundation in art and design. And what this is a portfolio building course at the school. This is something you can go through and actually build your portfolio at Gnomon to use that portfolio to apply to our full-time program. And lastly, we also offer individual courses at Gnomon as well. So I'm going to unpack each of these so you can understand the differences between them and each of their sort of unique benefits and things that they're going to accomplish as being a student in them. So first off, let's talk about our BFA at Gnomon. Now, this is our main academic offering. This is a fully accredited, full-time, 4-year program. Accreditation means that financial aid is going to be available. And we have a financial aid department that is researching and constantly aware of all the different kinds of benefits and aid that are going to be specifically available to a student at Gnomon. So we're going to be able to help you to know what you need to go research to find out. This is a full-time program, and it's very robust. It's very, very full-time. Of course, it's on our campus. Right now we're in social distancing. So our entire full-time program is now online. And this is not something that we cobbled together at the last minute. This is a very well-built and custom-built online platform that Gnomon had built actually years ago for some of our courses that we wanted to offer online. And so what that's been able to do for us is that when we were not allowed to be on campus because of social distancing, we just simply transferred our entire program to this online platform. If you're interested in how that works, you can go to the Gnomon webpage, and right on the front page there, we've got a great video put together by our Chief Creative Officer, Josh Herman, talking about what the online learning experience is like. But I will tell you that we have sought to take the same kinds of interaction and experiences you're going to have in the classroom and put that in an online format so that our students can receive the full benefit of what it is to be in class at Gnomon. All right, so the 4-year program it has an optional concentration in game art. What does that mean? It means that at a certain point in the program, you can choose to specifically focus the rest of your classes on game art. So that would be, for example, what Omar does. He's working in a game studio, working within game engines. So we're going to take things like, your animation classes, VFX classes, and so forth, and teach you how to do that specifically within game engines. This is important because that's what a game studio is going to be looking for. Yes, great, you could do animation, you could do modeling, but can you do it for the pipeline that a game engine demands? And so we give that optional concentration. But the 4-year program at Gnomon is going to cover all of the aspects of a 3D generalist skill set. And what that means is you'll be learning the entire digital production pipeline. So all of those different steps and positions that I put up on the screen earlier, we're going to be teaching you how to do all of that. Why? Because that really is what is going to give you the platform to rise very quickly. And as you start looking into one particular area, whether it's game artist, like what Omar's doing in studio, or animator, or VFX artist, you're going to have that very strong platform that you are building your particular area of focus on top of. So what that looks like is you've got 4 years of learning the entire pipeline. And then in your last year, you're choosing 4 electives that let you zero in on a particular aspect that you're very passionate about. And it's going to be that sort of foot that you want to put forward in your demo reel and as you go out and start seeking your first jobs in the industry. Now, the BFA at Gnomon has a rolling admission. A portfolio submission is required. So you are accepted on the basis of your portfolio. So that is something that has to be submitted and reviewed. And I'll talk to you just a little bit later about how that works at Gnomon, because we are here to also help you with your portfolio before you apply. I want to make sure that you know that. But yeah, you need to apply with a portfolio. You need to get accepted. And then you're going to be going through these 4 years. And you can do the application process in the fall, the winter, the spring, or the summer. So it's not like you just have that window in the fall and then you have to wait an entire year. So we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to apply when you are ready, when you've been working with admissions and you're at that place you're ready to go. A lot of our students chose to stay on during the summer term at Gnomon for their entire time in the course. And what that does is if you don't take summer breaks, it actually allows you to finish our 4-year program in just 3 years. And most of our students do that because they want to get through it in 3 years and get out there and get working that much faster. So that's the way the BFA at Gnomon works. Definitely going to be the option for someone who wants to learn all of these skill sets, wants to become industry ready, but also come away from that training with a fully accredited 4-year college degree. Next up is going to be our 2-year certificate program. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is more advanced and more intensive than the 4-year program at Gnomon. This is designed, for example, for students that may already have a degree from another art school and are really looking to come Gnomon to be a finishing school, to really zero in on learning digital production, learning the pipeline, and launching out into the industry. For example, it's very similar to what Omar did at Gnomon. He already had gone to another art school that said, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to go in here for this 2-year program, and we are going to learn this stuff as quickly as we can and launch out in the industry. That being said, it is a more demanding program, and that's because we are actually teaching you more in less time through this program. So I like to say it's a little more akin to like Navy SEALs training in digital production. And if you're interested in the 2-year program, you can definitely speak with admissions about that. It also does require an application process and a portfolio submission. But it's designed to build foundational 3D skills before allowing you to choose an area of emphasized study for the remainder of the program. These would be things like, character animation or VFX, or deciding that you want to specifically be a 3D generalist, working in a studio in multiple skill sets. You got 5 areas you can choose from that you add on top of that 3D, generalist training at the onset of the program. So what our director of education describes that as, we give you the training to be a monster, and then we let you build an area of emphasized study on top of that, and then launch out into the industry. So that's a 2-year at Gnomon. And then next up would be our foundation in art and design. And this is really a great opportunity because there's no portfolio submission that is required for this program. This is actually designed to help you build your portfolio. So for example, if you're interested in applying to Gnomon, but maybe you don't have a portfolio put together yet, maybe you haven't had an opportunity to learn some of those foundational art skills that are going to be necessary to put together a portfolio in order to apply to our programs, you have the opportunity through the foundation to literally build your portfolio at Gnomon before you apply to going to Gnomon. And what that looks like is it's a 1-year course, but so it's 4 terms. It's not required that you stay in it for the entire year. It's designed for you to get in and get what you need. So these are going to be things like figure drawing, anatomy for artists, color and light theory, perspective drawing, how to draw in 3D in a 2D medium. And then as you move further into that course, you're going to start learning things like character and creature design, vehicle and mech design, environment design. So design for entertainment classes that are going to help you have that very robust foundation upon which you can build a strong portfolio and then apply to come to Gnomon. Additionally, this is also a great course for someone who maybe isn't intending to learn digital production, is going to be applying to a different type of art school, but still needs to build a portfolio. This is also a great opportunity to do that right here at Gnomon, learning from industry artists as a part of that. Now, if you're in the foundation course at Gnomon and you're maintaining a GPA of, I believe it's like 3.2, 3.3 or higher, you automatically get a $500 scholarship towards our BFA program. And about half of the classes taught in the foundation are also accredited and transferable into the BFA. So if your aim is to apply to the BFA at Gnomon and you need to build a portfolio, this is a great way for you to have a very strong foundation, to have an actual educational course that's going to help you build that portfolio, to take some amazing classes, and even to take some classes that are going to transfer into the BFA. So it's like a Kickstarter rather than sort of a prerequisite or taking some time to work on this before going into the full-time program at Gnomon. It's a great onboarding ramp for high school students or just graduated high school students. It tends to be a great bridge for you into the full program at Gnomon if you have not built up a portfolio yet. So fantastic opportunities through the foundation in art and design. And lastly, I'll just mention that we also offer a vast amount of individual courses at Gnomon. Well over 70 of the courses in our full-time programs are also taught individually. And these are classes that are going to be in a cumulative 30 hours over 10 weeks. It looks like one class, the class meets once a week for 3 hours, and that's going to involve, some critique from the instructor about whatever you've been working on for your homework for that week. It's going to involve lectures and demonstrations, and then you're going to go out and you're going to work on what is the next assignment for the following week. You're going to do that for 10 weeks. Individual classes at Gnomon, there's no portfolio submission required. It's just simply you can go to our website, browse the choice of individual classes available, and simply enroll in the class of your choice. If you're looking for advice on which class might be the best fit for you, fit for your skill level, that's something you could talk with our admissions advisors about as well, and they can give you advice on what classes could be a good fit for you. Great thing about individual classes at Gnomon is they're all online now. So it's a great opportunity right now to take an individual class from Gnomon with a Gnomon instructor from the convenience of your own home. So if you're interested in that, definitely look into that. Follow up with admissions today. And then with that, speaking of admissions, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the admissions process at Gnomon. This is important to take time on today because the way that we do it tends to be different than most art schools out there. The typical art school experience tends to be, hey, here's the school, here's the program, you're going to need to submit a portfolio, and then we'll let you know if you got in. So you kind of just put your work together, you submit the portfolio, you hope it's good enough, cross your fingers, and wait for admissions to tell you whether or not you got in. That's not the way that we do it at Gnomon, because we know that Gnomon is a demanding school, and it's not necessarily an easy school to get into. We've made sure that our advisors are available to you before you ever apply to our program. And what that looks like is we've got a team of 4 fantastic admissions advisors. These are them right here. In fact, Xander right here on the screen, he is in the chat today, and he's the one that's been chatting with you and moderating the chat. He's been there, and I'm sure he's been doing so already, answering any Gnomon-related questions right there in the chat. He can provide you with links to anything you might need to know, as well as a link that will help you get in touch with an admissions advisor at Gnomon. And this is really important because these guys are available to you to help you before you ever decide to actually apply to the school. What they're going to do is they are going to talk with you and answer questions about our programs, what is the best fit for you. They're going to help you evaluate what is the best kind of plan to make and trajectory you're going to take as you move towards entering and applying a program at Gnomon. And really importantly, they're going to start looking at your artwork before you submit your portfolio. So they're going to want to see your artwork. And this is not, they're not going to view your artwork and make an assessment as to whether or not you're going to be able to get into our programs. What they're going to do is they're going to look at your artwork and start to coach you. They know what we're looking for in a portfolio submission to our school. They know what kinds of things we're looking for an acceptable portfolio. And so what they'll do is they'll look over your artwork and they'll start going back and forth with you and coaching you in areas you might still need to grow in. They'll give you kind of some next steps and some things that you can go learn. And if you are self-starting enough to go work on those things yourself and then reach back out to them again, they will continue to coach you like that back and forth. This is the person that ultimately will be bringing your portfolio to our review committee and actually advocating for you for the program. So this is a really important person to get to know and to begin working with, and how you can level up your art before you apply. So I can't stress that enough. You don't need to be afraid to talk to these guys. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to make some predetermination of whether or not you are the right fit for the school. In your first conversation, they are just going to simply talk with you and help you figure out what you need, and they're going to help you with your goals moving forward. And they want to help bring you to that point that you can submit your portfolio and apply, and they can bring your portfolio before our committee that looks that over and decides whether or not you're going to be admitted to the school. So these guys are going to be your lifeline for that process. And if you're interested, reach out to them today, and they'll start working with you. And the last thing I'll say about admissions is if you're ever wondering whether or not you should be reaching out to them, excuse me, the answer is yes. If you are going, well, I don't know if I'm good enough to reach out to admissions, or I don't know if I should be showing them my artwork. The answer to that question is yes, you should reach out to them, because what they want to do is just take you wherever you're at right now and help talk about the next steps for you. If you're interested in Gnomon, they want to be as helpful to you as they can. So definitely reach out to them today. So just a few words about our campus. Yes, we are in quarantine right now and we're not able to be on our physical campus, but I do want to share with you what our campus is like, because we, when we're able to reopen, all the people who have started our full-time programs online are going to be able to migrate to campus. And I want to show you this amazing facility, which is where we do our training, where you be doing your learning. So that is our amazing campus at Gnomon. It's actually built on, we are in a production lot in Hollywood. We're in the original studio for Technicolor. And that allows us to immerse our students in an actual production environment, a very inspired environment. All 9 of our digital labs are equipped with industry standard software and hardware, and are available to our students 7 days a week from, I think, morning until about midnight. So these labs and all that stuff are available. For local students who are in our full-time programs right now, there are also opportunities to get software and hardware, which is something you can follow up with admissions about. So this is what you can look forward to coming to Gnomon, but we have a lot of students that are choosing to enter our full-time programs while in quarantine. So you can enter the program online. And this has worked out really, really well for a lot of students to get started. It's a great way to get started for anybody who is out of state. You don't have to move yet. You've got more time to assess housing and stuff like that. And then we'll be able to migrate to the campus as it reopens again. So that being said, I just want to reiterate that we've got a very strong and robust online platform that has been custom built for Gnomon courses. This was built before quarantine ever started. This is something we're using for online classes for years. And now we're able to utilize it for our entire program. So we definitely don't want that to be a deterrent for you for starting the program. You can talk with an admissions advisor about what that's like. They'll be able to answer further questions for what an online experience starting into our programs is like. One of the things that's really cool about Gnomon, and actually Omar and I talked about this today earlier on the stream, is that Gnomon is more than just classes. It's a community. Gnomon is essentially a hub where information and education is constantly available. The industry and its artists are constantly coming to us. And one of the things we do are some really fantastic live events. Being off campus and away from our soundstage, our events have not stopped. Now we're just simply doing them on streaming platforms, which is part of what you're watching today. But here are some examples of the types of events that we've been doing. We've also been doing some really great informational events like today's event, which is a virtual info session together with an industry artist. We also have some fantastic events that are kind of featuring the insides of Gnomon, spotlighting different aspects of the school, because we realize you can't come visit our campus. We want to bring our campus to you. We want to bring our education leads and our instructors and admissions and our placement department to you. So if you're interested in any of those things, definitely check us out. Take a look at our playlists on YouTube. We've already done some fantastic events. We did a nice event with our admissions director talking about what makes a great portfolio. So if you're looking for portfolio advice, it's a great stream to watch. And we've also spoken with our director of placement about landing your dream job after school. And that's Shannon Wiggins we mentioned earlier. And she talks about how Gnomon students are finding their careers and moving forward. So those resources are available to you for free. Please check them out, as well as well over 100 events that have been done at Gnomon in the past with the artists behind some of your favorite films and games. So those are our events. And with that, guys, sorry, this is just an open house slide. In fact, we aren't having open house on campus, but we just recently finished our very first virtual open house on September the 20th. And that is available for viewing on Twitch as a pre-recorded stream, as well as on our YouTube channel. And if you're like, how can I come to an open house? You can do that now. We've got all of the information and some of the experiences that we convey through a standard open house in a streamed format, available now, pre-recorded for your viewing on our YouTube channel or on Twitch. Definitely check that out in parallel to even following up with admissions, because you'll be able to learn a lot more about the admissions process as well as financial aid. And we got a really cool panel that we did as well with some alumni from Gnomon coming and talking about their experiences. So definitely worth checking that out. So with that, guys, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be on the stream today with us. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me share about Gnomon and the opportunities that we're providing here. Definitely, if this is something that you're interested in, you owe it to yourself to reach out to admissions. They're going to be a lifeline for you. They're going to help answer questions. They're not going to pressure you. They want to serve you and make sure you find the right way forward for yourself. And they're also available to coach you in your portfolio for free. So definitely do that. My name is Adam Hartel. I work as a Gnomon representative. I also do give one-on-one informational sessions. So if you have further questions about Gnomon, you can either set up an appointment with me just to learn a little bit more, or you can go straight to admissions, which also is really the next best step after presentations such as today's. But we want to make sure that you've got the best opportunities to move forward. I want to thank Miranda, who my colleague has been doing all of the event production, all the stream production today, as well as everyone else who's made today's stream possible. Please tune in next week on Wednesday for the Art Jam that I mentioned earlier that Josh Herman hosts. That's on Wednesday from 10 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. It's going to be a hang. He's been working in Zbrush, answering questions about his process and making some really cool stuff. And then a week from today, we will be back and we will be doing a stream with education lead Max Dayan here at the school. And we are going to be talking about, what it takes to educate artists for successful careers. So we'll be talking about Gnomon's programs, our amazing instructors, and how students are getting trained and becoming industry ready at our school through our program. So with that, guys, hope to see you back here on the stream. And thank you so much for today. Continue to be creative, be safe, and we look forward to getting to see each other in person on campus again. I'm Adam. Thanks for being here,